Hello, namaste and namaskaram. I'm Nishani Manohar, the Executive Director of the IIT Madras Alumni Association and your host for the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed guests, Professor Kamakoti, Director IIT Madras, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chairperson MSSRF, Mrs. Shamla Rajaram, President IIT Madras Alumni Association, Professor T. Pradeep Krishnan Narayanan, Faculty of IIT Madras, alumni members, and guests of the Chennai International Center. Thank you for joining us today on this momentous occasion of the launch of the book, Empowering India, Ideas for Action by Scientists and Engineers. This book is just not a book. It's a testament to the collective dreams, aspirations, efforts of close to hundreds of scientists and engineers who collectively strive for progress, inclusivity, empowerment of the nation. To begin this book launch, we have a special video for you. Let us all watch this video, which will play on the screen now. Thank you. Let us inspire to collaborate, to innovate, and to empower India. The music for this video was created by Raghavan, an alumni from the batch of 1996. Please let's give him a round of applause. Raghavan is not yet here with us today, but I think he will be joining us soon. I now take great pride to invite our esteemed dignitaries onto the stage. I wholeheartedly welcome Professor Kamakoti, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Mrs. Shamla Rajaram, Professor T. Pradeep, and Mr. Krishnan Narayanan to take your seats on the stage and request you to officially launch and release the book. Rakesh, please bring the books on the stage. Photographer. Request you to open the ribbon and pose for the camera as well. Thank you so much. I request Shamla to hand over a small memento to Dr. Soumya Swaminathan and to Professor Kamakoti. Thank you. I request the dignitaries to take their seats off stage, please. Thank you very much. I would like to first invite Professor Kamakoti, Director of IIT Madras. Professor Kamakoti received his MS and PhD from IIT Madras. So we have a lot of other audience. And joined IIT in 2001 and took over as director in Jan 2022. His areas of specialization is computer architecture, information security, and many others. He heads the microprocessor development program and the information security education at IIT Madras. He has over 150 publications in international journals, recipient of the DRDO Academic Excellence Award, ACCS Lifetime Achievement Award, and many, many more. I welcome you on stage, sir, to address the gathering on building academics and research excellence in India. Over to you.
Thanks, Nishani. Friends, a very hearty welcome to this Alumni Center. How many are visiting this center for the first time? Oh, very nice. Welcome. So, friends, we are in the cusp of big academic and research revolution. That much is what we feel sitting in a premier institution. The primary reason is that COVID actually has brought us certain realities, made us realize certain realities, specifically on the technology dependence. If you actually go through the book which Pradeep and Krishnan have put together, this enlists certain foundational building blocks that we as Indians collectively have built up over a period of time, which we need to rightly put into use in the next 25 years, as our Honorable Prime Minister says, the Amrit Kal, to see that by 2047, when we touch the 100th year of independence, India is truly a technology-independent nation. And that is something that we must all aspire. And that is one of the biggest efforts we are taking, and many policies have been formulated, including the National Education Policy. So I'll take this opportunity to talk about what NEP 2020 has put forward and how many academic institutions across the country are trying to leverage some of the great ideas that have been postulated in that policy to bring in a new type of education and what is it that we aspire for. So, friends, first and foremost, let us start. There are three dimensions to school education. One starts with school education, then there is higher education, then there is reskilling, upskilling. And all these three are extremely important. We had the opportunity to host the first working group seminar of the G20 nations in this same venue. And one of the things that we realized, every country had its own challenges. Challenge number one was that they are after a European type of education fit into many of them. They have lost some of their original traditional knowledge system identity, which every country today, many countries today aspire to bring it back. And they believe that that is very important for their nation. If they really want to tap the intellect in their nation, that traditional knowledge system will bring a lot of value. And that is what one very important thing that we realized in the G20. The second important thing is that they did have list a lot of challenges, specifically in COVID time. Friends, I'm very happy and I'm very proud to tell you that for every problem or every challenge these nations put in forward to us, India has a solution. And we have implemented a solution. So let me now go through some of the important things. Number one, let us talk about school education. Foundation literacy, numeracy has been very importantly put forward there. Our target today, between 15 to 35 age group, we are the youngest population in the globe. And if we fail to educate them properly, we become the most uneducated country in the next 10 to 15 years, which will not be a very Thanksgiving day for us. So improving the GER, the gross enrollment ratio of how many students finish their school and come to college, we are around 26%, but Tamil Nadu is at 52%. Now we need to improve that, and 2035 is the target set where we make GER to 50%. So how do we do that? one of the important things that we as an institute at the IIT Madras realize that we need to go to the grassroots. We need to start talking to children. We need to start talking to the parents. Tell them about the importance of higher education beyond school. Motivate them to do some very interesting things and tell that there is a big success awaiting them if they pursue the path of education. I think that's very, very important. Friends, I'm very happy to tell you that in the last 2 years, we have set up around 200 rural interaction centers. Rural population, rural intelligence is something that we have not tapped to the best of our abilities, or we have not tapped to the best of the need today. We have now set up 200 rural interaction centers where between 6 to 8, our volunteers talk to the children, they clear the doubts that they have in the school, plus they also talk about higher education. We also get some alumnus who can talk in the mother tongue. For example, in Tamil Nadu, we talk in Tamil. We also have 100 rural interaction centers in UP, where we get people who can talk in Hindi and motivate them about higher education. Friends, I'm very happy to tell you that in the 100 centers we set up in Tamil Nadu, due to intervention, the schools which had 50% pass rate, last public examination, we have touched 98%. And that's something very, very, very close to, very, very heartwarming for us. There are very simple cases. There was a place where there were no biology teachers. 3 young girl students came and told, "Sir, we are interested in biology. Can you do something about it?" It was in the month of March. We quickly arranged a biology teacher from Chennai who taught biology in Tamil. And all these 3 children, girl children, scored above 90 out of 100. And they got into a biological science course at Shastra University, for example. So these are some very interesting changes that we are able to bring with just minor interventions. And that is the power of education, and that is where we need to go and reach at the grassroots level. And I strongly believe that we now have a donor in Karnataka who wants to do it for the entire Karnataka villages, around 100,000 villages. Friends, we have around 1,55,000 sub-post offices in the country. And every sub-post office must have a rural interaction center of IIT Madras. That's my selfish interest as a director. And if that happens, I believe that that can be one powerful intervention where we can take our gross enrollment ratio from 35% by 2035, from 26% to 50%, almost double. So this is very, very important. The second interesting thing and important thing that we brought about is that higher education should be one of the important sustainable development goals prescribed by the United Nations, is that we need to provide affordable, equitable, accessible education to all. And this is something very, very important. And we have now opened up, we had 20 years, the entire IIT systems, all the IITs now, we have 23 of them. We have together worked and have more than 1,500 plus courses which are today on the NPTEL Swayam platform. Sorry, I also missed Math Science and CMI. I have Meena and Madhav here who have played a very important role. So we have a very great collection of courses. By this, whatever course is taught in some of these elite institutions, premier institutions, the same course, the same content, the same delivery today is made available to any student across India and also abroad, and with free of cost. And this is something that we have achieved. And today we have close to 1,000 plus courses. 700,000 students every semester take these courses and basically write the examination. Examinations are proctored, so it is a very strict evaluation. And universities believe in the grade that we give, and they are allowing them to credit those grades in their particular grade card. And AICTE, the All India Council for Technical Education, has permitted 40% of the courses can be through this online mode. So we do have a policy that is supporting it. And that is how we have made education as much equitable and accessible, quality education accessible to all. And so based on that, IIT Madras started this BS Data Science program. Today, Madhavan is one of the prime teachers there, the most celebrated teacher of... Madhavan, can you just get up? Thank you. So, today, friends, we have 22,500 students who are enrolled into our BS Data Science program. And we don't have an age gap here. It is, you have multiple exits. At the end of the first year, you can take a certificate and leave. At the end of the second year, you can take 2 diplomas and leave. At the end of the third year, you get a BSc degree. At the end of 4th year, you get a BS degree. So multiple exit is now made possible. Again, this is again formulated in the National Education Policy. And then, very importantly, since we don't have a cap on the number of seats, we don't also have a cap on the age. So our age range is between 17 and 82. A grandpa wrote the entrance exam eligibility test in 81, failed it. He was very sad. He said, no, grandpa, you can get it. And 82, he cleared and came with sweets and met me and said, so we have this 17 to 82. We have this as a family course, father, son, mother, daughter, everybody taking this course and collectively doing problems in the dining table. So a lot of things are happening. So we are seeing a big change in the landscape of education in our country. And this is something, again, enabled because of very good government policies. Today, UGC, in my opinion, the best order, most historic order today, is that you can do 2 courses at the same time, provided the timetables don't clash. And so they can do 2 degrees. So we are seeing a lot of students doing an engineering degree in civil or any other discipline, but evening they do this degree on data science. So we see the map there. And we are also seeing lot of... I went to one of the biggest automobile factory, and suddenly 10 people came and said, we are your students. I said, what? We are doing data science at IIT. Asked them, why are you doing? They said, sir, every day we are generating close to a terabyte of data from our engine and fine-tuning, etc. So this is now another very important challenge that we are addressing through the digital medium, and that is very, very crucial. The third important thing that we feel is today quite prominent is to have this interdisciplinary education. Today, if you take any system that we want to develop, it comprises, at least it involves 3 to 4 disciplines together. So one of the things that many institutions today, many higher education institutions have done is that the students join a particular program because of certain selection criteria. If you take IITs, we have the JEE Advanced, and that one day, your performance, if you have a headache, you're gone. That gives you, that grade, that rank, basically gives you a seat, which I call it as karma. Okay, karma seat may not really coincide with what I want. I might have been a topper, but then I would have got in the JEE exam and got into computer science. But computer science may not be the one that is suiting me. And I realized it after 4 or 5 semesters. So typically in last 20 years, as I had seen, this knowledge, this revelation that computer science is not suited for me comes around 5th or 6th semester. So one of the things many institutions have done today is that 40% of the electives, 40% of the credits can be open electives. You can do Bharatanatyam, you can do law, you can do anything that you want. The remaining 60% is what you are supposed to do for your karma degree. So this is where IIT Madras was one of the pioneers to get this in place. My predecessor actually fought quite long battles in the Senate. Pradeep would have been a witness for this, to get this in place. Now, that we have exploited today. At the end of the 3rd year, the student can opt for an interdisciplinary dual degree. For example, a student who does a civil engineering BTech can do an MA in public policy. So at the end of 5 years, he gets an engineering degree in civil and an MA in public policy. And that's very important. Today we are talking of Pradhan Mantri Ghar Awas Yojana. Now, we have to write a policy for that. And who writes this policy? And that policy must be implementable. So there is a lot of technology that is needed when people formulate policy, and a public servant with an engineering background, specifically knowing some of these issues can be very useful in this direction. Today, somebody can do a BTech in ocean engineering and an MTech in quantitative finance. Today, maritime administration is going to become very important for our country. India is the only country where we have an ocean named after us, the Indian Ocean. And if you see the entire Sagar Mala, there's going to be a lot of maritime activity that's going to be possible. And so maritime administration is very important, and now this is also made possible. So this type of saying that a person doing mechanical engineering to additive manufacturing is not is not something very thrilling, but these type of combinations are today made possible, and this is one of the very important academic challenge that we are trying to address. And this interdisciplinary education, I strongly believe, will be very important for us. The last one I want to say before I sign off today is innovation. Friends, we must be the owner of our ideas. Today, when you buy a mobile phone, 20% to 30% of that cost goes as royalty for what they call as standard essential patents. Today, you have a 5G, there is a 5G standard, and there are companies which now have something called a standard essential patent, which essentially means that if you are going to have a 5G phone, that must work according to the 3GPP standard. And since it has implemented, it's working, it means my patented idea is part of it and you need to pay. So more than 20% of your cost actually goes out in dollars as, what you call in Tamil, Anniya Selavani. This dollar payment goes out just as patents. Friends, we must be very, very clear about it. If India wants to become a superpower, as we are aspiring in 2047, we must be the owner of these ideas. We must put standard essential patents. So, in this same IIT Madras Research Park, friends, in the history of communications, telecommunication, especially mobile communication, the first standard essential patent has come with a consortium of 5 engineering institutions, IITs, the Samir and the CVET put together. We got the 5GI, which is India's standard essential patent for 5G, which is now part of the release 17 of the 3GPP. So it is very, very important that we as a country must go and patent our ideas and develop these standard essential patent and know how to enforce them and see if there are violations and bring them to light. And that can be a very good revenue generator for the country as a whole. So in this direction, every education, the biggest challenge that we need to put in front of us is how do we get these patentable ideas, how do we patent them, and what is it that we need to do as an institution here. So if you look at IIT Madras, and this is made possible in many institutions today, that we have a complete entrepreneurship stack. If a student has an idea, there is a way by which this idea gets converted to a design, and then there are pre-incubators. We have a center for innovation. Some time permits, I wish all of you can go and see there. It is run by the students, for the students, to the students. And then this idea to convert it into a prototype is basically done by a pre-incubator called Nirman. And this particular building has 5 incubators, one for rural technology, for cyber physical systems, health technologies, and we are now starting a fintech, and then we have health technology, plus we have our mother incubator. So we have 400 startup companies housed in this place with an evaluation of around 40,000 crores. And this is something very, very important. And on the patent side, which is very crucial for innovation, we have a very robust AI-driven patenting tool. I think I see Velu here, some auditors are here. It is very important that we exploit AI for patenting. So there is an Atmanirbhar indigenous tool by a company in Chandigarh, which in my opinion has the world-class AI tool, which we are using here, which when you submit an idea, it will search all the patent databases across the globe and tell you what are the patents that are basically competing with you. It will also give you, if you go and commercialize, what is the total addressability market for that particular idea. And friends, last year we filed 240 patents from IIT Madras, and we had 179 granted. And the last 6 years, we did not have one patent that was rejected. So these are all our statistics. And this year, I have given a target to them, a patent a day. Friends, there is a company which went and patented double click on a mouse. Okay? I think anything that we do is much more better than double click. Right? So we have now gone into very deep core areas, and we have now started the patenting. This year, we are almost touching, we have touched a patent a day. I said this financial year we should close with 365, and the next year should be 366, being a leap year. Okay, so this is way we are now moving towards innovation. So these are all the challenges, and this is what IITs and many of the premier institutions in the country are doing. And it's going to be, I truly believe that this is going to be a very important, nice journey in front of us with a very big challenge. And we have to be on the run to be looking stationary. And there is so much of work to be done. And I'm very happy that I got a platform where I could share all these ideas. And I'm sure if 100 people look into these ideas, you may have your own suggestions. You're very free to come back and tell if you have any brilliant ideas that we can take forward. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Pradeep and Krishnan for putting this. What is very happy about IIT is when you do a launch, we have an alumnus and a faculty who can get together and write this book. I am also a musician who can do the music for it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, Professor. It's wonderful hearing you speak. So I'm a recent alumnus. I have graduated with a mechanical engineering degree 2 years ago. So I'm currently working as a engineer in Jaguar Land Rover.
Huh?
JLR, Jaguar Land Rover. We make the Range Rover.
In core area, right? Mechanical.
Yes. I work in the CFD and thermal.
Okay.
So I think the Rural Interaction Center is like one idea I really liked. So, I just wanted to understand, I really believe like it has a great potential. So when we are actually reaching the grassroots, so we will be able to understand better their problems, and that's really important that we'll be able to solve them. So, just wanted to hear your thoughts on that direction. Like how are we trying to understand the issues they are facing? With respect to specifically here, our focus being higher education. Yes. Higher, so how are we trying to understand their problems and trying to contribute to solving them with respect to increasing the enrollment in the higher education?
Absolutely. So I can give you one or two examples. I'm a prof, I keep on talking, so stop me if I'm boring. Okay, so very interesting. The first problem, as I told you, in one village there was no teacher in biology. It just came out, right? The second problem we found was the students were actually looking very sad, and then meaning very worn out. And then we found out that they don't have food in the evening. Then slowly, for people coming to this particular place, right, they said the people around in the neighborhood, they started feeding them. They bought biscuits, and that actually started increasing the enrollment. We're starting from 5th standard to 12th standard. Number 2. Number 3 is that suppose I say 3 plus 5 into 4, right? Suppose we say 3 plus 5 into 4. If somebody writes it as 22, right? Then we can give them more exercise because it's an arithmetic error. But somebody writes it as, 32. Then there's a conceptual error. Because he first adds and then multiplies. But by President's rule, you should multiply and then add. Okay, these type of very interesting insights come there, right? So what the school has taught something, but they have not said that if you get an equation, plus first do multiplication and then add. So these type of very simple requirements in terms of education, we are able to infer from these small things that we do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you so much. Moving on, it's my absolute pleasure for me to introduce our next guest, Mrs. Soumya Swaminathan, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan was most recently WHO's Chief Scientist and before that Deputy Director General for Programs. As WHO's inaugural Chief Scientist, Dr. Swaminathan built the Science Division with a focus on research, quality assurance of norms and standards, and digital health. She played a key role during the pandemic in coordinating scientific efforts at the WHO, as well as setting up COVAX with a focus on equitable vaccine distribution to LMICs. Pediatrician from India and a globally recognized researcher on tuberculosis and HIV, she brings with her 30 years of experience in clinical care research and has worked throughout her career to translate research into impactful programs. Dr. Swaminathan was
Secretary to the Government of India for Health Research and Director General to the Indian Council of Medical Research, where she focused on bringing science and evidence into health policy making, building research capacity in Indian medical schools, and forging South-South partnerships in health services. From 2009 to 2011, she also served as a coordinator at the UNICEF, UNDP, World Bank, and WHO's Special Program for Research and Training in Tropical Diseases, Geneva. Welcome, ma'am. We're looking forward to your key address on science and technology for India at 100. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishani, and for having invited me, and congratulations to Krishnan and Pradeep on this book. It's really very impressive, the amount of research that you've done, the data you've pulled together, and it's also clear from the endorsements on the cover that a lot of people think that I think you've brought a lot of value. And I was just quickly skimming through it. The recommendations you make are also very, very logical. So I think, Dr. Kamakoti's spoken quite a lot about the gaps, and he's given very positive examples of what can be done. So we should, of course, always look at how we can improve and where we can improve, but then there are pathways that always are available for us. So when we look at science and technology in 2047, that's about 25 years from now, I think that the trajectory that we're on now, and particularly the focus on science and technology and innovation during the pandemic, as Dr. Kamakoti was mentioning, I think the pandemic opened our eyes, not just in India, but across the world, to a lot of things. And countries looked within themselves to see what capacities they had, where they could respond well and where they could not actually respond or meet the needs of their own populations. And that has set in motion a number of global initiatives, and as well as local and regional. For example, the Africa Union, Africa was in the worst possible situation, I think, if you look at the different continents, because they have very little R&D, advanced R&D, and particularly manufacturing capacity is practically non-existent. And they import about 99% of their needs. I'm talking about health products. So vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, 99% are imported. And therefore, they were in a situation where they just had to sit and wait for either donations or, for countries to sell or to agree to share. And very often, because the scarcity of these products, no country was actually willing, with some exceptions, to share or to provide until their own needs were met. And so they were at the back of the line, and they realized that unless they become self-sufficient, they are going to probably face this problem repeatedly in the future. And therefore now there's a huge initiative. I was part of trying to set up that technology transfer program, where we focused on mRNA, because that was the latest and newest technology, and it has a lot of applications well beyond COVID. And so we tried to work with the big companies which had the mRNA technology, and of course they were not willing to share or cooperate in any manner whatsoever. And so we also said, okay, we can do it, without big pharma. And so this technology transfer program, I think we have to wait and see how successful it is. But essentially it's about using technology for public good, and essentially saying that when you're making a life-saving product, then it should not really be about patents and profits, but it really needs to be on how many people you can save, how many lives. So the whole philosophy there has to be different. And you may be the inventor of a technology, but I think the satisfaction you get should be from actually seeing how it's benefiting society. And so this whole issue of R&D that's currently driven by profits, and the motivation is patents and profits, versus an R&D which is for the public good, which is driven by open data, open science, sharing of knowledge, collaboration between people nationally and globally, and ensuring the goal being, of course, this equitable and affordable access to health products. So despite all the efforts that WHO made to ensure equitable access, and we knew what the problem would be at the beginning, so we were not taken by surprise. And we tried to address it by creating a lot of awareness and literally trying to cajole countries to agree to sharing their products, but it didn't happen. So this is why then this business of Atmanirbhar, the way we call it, or self-sufficiency in technology is important. So I think for every new technology, the other thing we realize is that, and this is again, it's from time immemorial, that every new discovery and every new scientific advancement and technology has, of course, many opportunities and positives, but always has a risk and a downside. And it depends how you use it. So I'm sure everybody's seen the film Oppenheimer. The fact that, of course, you can use nuclear fission for peaceful purposes, but you could also use it to generate an atomic bomb. So AI is the same, and there's so much now talk about AI, and its immense potential for use, for good, and for public good. But there's also that downside that you could use AI in combination with other advances in science, like biotechnology, for example. And if somebody did want to create, a biological weapon, it's much more easier now to do it with the tools that we have, both in biology and biotechnology, the kind of tools we have today, like gene editing and so on. And you can actually sit in your garage and create something. So the issue is, and I think Dr. Kamakoti also was talking about this interdisciplinary science. I believe that it's really important for all scientists to have an education and a background in the social sciences, and particularly in ethics. And I know that IIT Madras, you have this the Department of Humanities and very good people. In fact, I was there also for another book release which was on ethics. So, because without that, if you're on a single track, then I think you're a bit disconnected from, social norms, expectations, and also the realities of life, and knowing about history and the mistakes that people have made in the past, etc., are really very important. So I think that as we look at our national education policy and also education from school, I think onwards into higher education, one does need a well-rounded education. And I think whether you're on a medical school or in an engineering school or in a biotechnology course, you need, I think, compulsorily to take courses in something which is completely unrelated to what you're studying. In fact, even having gone through medicine myself, and I don't think it's changed that much in all these years, we were not really exposed to these type of discussions around medical ethics, around end-of-life care, around palliative care, around suffering, and you're expected to learn all that, by yourself, and of course no exposure at all to anything to do with engineering and so on. So I think part of the problem is that we are working in silos, and some of the reasons for perhaps not having more advanced more in terms of meeting the needs of our own population is that very often we don't have a platform to sit and talk together. So again, this move now for the IITs and, for example, the Indian Institute of Science to now have a medical or a biomedical program and a facility on the campus or in collaboration with other medical institutions, I think is a really good opportunity. I saw in Delhi many years ago when Dr. M.K. Bhan was a Secretary of Biotechnology. He set up a program called the Stanford India Innovation Program. And and the whole idea there was that engineers and doctors would actually talk to each other and work together, and the engineers would come to the clinic. So for example, I know people who've gone and sat in a rural clinic somewhere in a primary health center and then realized that the need there was a test, a simple test to find out whether somebody has a urinary infection or not. There is nothing available at the moment. There are so many women coming with symptoms, and there was no way of diagnosing them. And then also to experience the reality of that primary healthcare center, which may not have 24 hours electricity or running water or air conditioning. So you have to create something which is going to work in that environment. No point creating a very sophisticated equipment which has to sit in an AC laboratory and have a highly specialized lab technician. So I think those types of realizations come when firstly you experience the reality, and secondly you talk to people who are facing that issue on a day-to-day basis. So I think more crosstalk between people who are in the science field but across different disciplines, and I think that's more and more beginning to happen now. So I think interdisciplinarity right from education onwards, and Dr. Kamakoti mentioned some of the issues in our school education. I think we have a long way to go, particularly in creating a scientific mindset, a curiosity-driven learning, and rational thinking. And again, one of the experiences I think everybody had during the pandemic was the amount of misinformation and disinformation that was out there. And that I think is a very big challenge for science going forward. And luckily in India, I think it was much less. But I saw how bad it was, particularly in some of the high-income countries. Huge anti-science and anti-vaccine, very well-funded lobbies who were very effectively using social media to create fear and panic and confusion among people. And unfortunately, what that does is it then percolates down to poorer countries. So we saw, for example, the whole of West Africa, which is French-speaking, highly impacted by anything that's going on in France. And France is one of the countries, unfortunately, with a very high rate of vaccine hesitancy or non-acceptance of vaccine. So what is being talked about there was impacting the populations in Africa, even though, even before the vaccines had reached them, there were people who had said, we will never take a vaccine. And of course, I think the inequity also played a role, because people felt that we're getting some discarded or old vaccines, or, they're giving it to us after they've finished. And so these are probably not good vaccines that are being sent to us. So there were a lot of those issues as well that became very challenging for governments actually to deal with. So I think creating, so we have a program at the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation called Every Child a Scientist program, and this has been running from 1999 onwards, and essentially it was to address this issue. And it basically what it does is we bring in school children from government schools, corporation schools, also run a summer residential program for children in middle school to come and spend 15 days in the foundation and the laboratories, talking to scientists, going on field visits, looking to see what biodiversity is all about, and generally doing hands-on work, doing joint project work. And we find that not only does it inculcate a spirit of curiosity, in fact, we have huge demand. I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here, because we've had these parents of the children coming and saying, please, can you do something with them in the summer holidays, because the mothers very often have to work. These children all come from very poor backgrounds. And the other thing is they don't always have access to digital technology tools at home. And we realized during the pandemic, right, that the educational deficit was the highest for those children who did not have access to computers and smartphones in order to keep up. And so I think that impact of the pandemic on education, we still haven't seen the full thing. I think it will take a few years to play out, and it's not going to be very nice. But again, in Tamil Nadu, there are efforts being made, through these coaching classes and so on in the evening. So anyway, so I think digital is another area where it solves so many issues, and we're so proud of our achievements in the digital space, and yet we know that there are people who are digitally excluded, and it can be very dangerous because the same people who get left out of other things or don't have access are often the ones who will probably be excluded from digital access. So it's not that we must give up digital. I think we have to be conscious of the fact and ensure that in everything that we do, that equity is there. So for me, the big challenge for the next 25 years for a country like India is to do science and technology in a way that meets the needs of our population, particularly those who are at the bottom now. And we can see the inequalities are quite a lot. And in fact, globally, we know inequalities are growing. Just a couple of days ago, the SDG midterm report has been released. As you know, we have 7 years to attain the SDG. Unfortunately, we are completely off track on all the SDGs except 1 or 2 targets which are likely to be met. And on things like poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, we're going the other way. We're going backwards rather than. So I think this is where science is going to come in. Science is the only way to find solutions for us to fast track and accelerate our progress. And so any country that has built a strong scientific infrastructure, I think is the one that's going to be ahead of others. But again, we need to just keep in mind these other things of building also trust and collaboration. Again, we saw one of the things during the pandemic was trust. Countries where there was high degree of trust between people and their governments, in general, had better outcomes than countries where there was a lot of mistrust. So I think that, again, building trust between institutions, and I hope that there will be more and more incentives for institutions to work together rather than say, no, this is mine, I'm going to do it, I have to achieve it on my own, why should I share my knowledge with others? It's going to take much longer, I think, to get there. So I think today is a day when you open any top scientific journal and you'll find that the most highly cited articles very often have dozens, if not hundreds, of authors. And so that is a sign that the cutting edge of science cannot be done by one individual or one institution, but needs collaboration and cooperation ideally across disciplines. But even within the same discipline, you can't have everything within your department or your group. And so you need to collaborate. So I think the incentives for collaboration can come from government announcing programs and funding which enables these type of the big science projects, the platforms, etc., to be created where many people can come together to solve these kind of societal problems which are big. And so they also need a mission mode approach. One of the successes of COVID was the mission approach, where there was single-minded focus on everybody dropped everything else and focused on COVID. And whether you were an engineer or an epidemiologist or a vaccine scientist or somebody who was working in material science, you put your mind to solving the problem. That is why within 11 months we had a vaccine. Within few months we had rapid diagnostic tests. When I've worked on a disease like tuberculosis for all my life, and it's very painful to see that slow progress that we have made in any innovations, even though we have the world's highest burden of TB, the world's highest death due to TB. TB has been the number one infectious disease killer before COVID and has regained the number one position today after COVID. only for 2 years in between, COVID had overtaken TB as an infectious disease #1 killer. So even HIV, we've done much more than we've done for TB. Of course, obvious reasons, HIV affected the rich countries. And so there was a huge amount of R&D money that was poured into HIV and so many drugs. We still don't have a vaccine, but we have people can live a full life now thanks to treatment, antiretroviral treatment. So I think the priorities also, national priorities need to be set. Global priorities is one thing, but you need also national priorities, which is, I think, happening now in a big way. For some things, you need a mission approach to solve the problem. And for others, of course, you have to encourage bottom-up individual innovation, brilliance, research coming out. But the bottom line is, I think the investment in science has to start from early school. We cannot have world-class, top-class engineers and scientists and researchers if our school education is not improved. So I think totally agree with Professor Kamakoti's analysis and also the effort that IIT Madras is making. But I think we need to make that movement a huge movement, because for every one child you touch, there are 100 others obviously in our country that need that hand-holding. And yes, I totally agree that I've also seen children who have a little bit of that hand-holding, they go on to be brilliant people. And even what we would call illiterate village women, long back, again in the 90s, MSSRF had set up information centers, knowledge centers in Puducherry and Madras. And it was basically the women, may have done class 8, class 9 sometimes, who were running those computer centers and providing services to the men folk who could be fishermen or farmers, generating information from the internet. At that time, there was no mobile phone. And so this type of centralized village knowledge centers, often run using satellite technology, were very useful for people to get. Today, almost everybody has a phone and has information on their fingertips, but yet I think they don't, they still need that kind of skilling and development. So I think I would perhaps stop there and take any questions if there are, or comments. Thank you.
My name is Karthik. I have one question, ma'am, on the field of medicine in general. See, I find quite a few people, I mean, on the one hand, engineering colleges are they high and people do make it and there are more options. In the case of medicine, what I notice is unless you get through the national entrance, the number of institutions where you can study is also less and the fees is exorbitant. And also medicine as a field takes a long time for a person to gain expertise, and the doctors gain expertise only in their 30s and 40s is where they actually start practicing. The curve cycle is high. Are there any ways by which, and the primary care is where we need the maximum. So is there any policy influence possible by which we can create those primary care doctors faster? That's just a thought occurred to me. I just thought I'll check with you whether there is a feasibility there.
Yes, I mean, I think this has been thought about, considered in the past. Some states have also tried to implement what you're saying. You're absolutely right that for a medical doctor, it's a long haul. It's also quite expensive. And at the end of the day, then they would prefer to stay in an urban environment. And so you find a huge, very disproportionate distribution of doctors in the country between urban and rural areas. Nobody wants to go and work in a remote rural area. So to address that, the idea was, let us train a cadre of people who can undergo a 3 or 4 year program on health, which will give them enough knowledge to be able to deliver primary health care. And you see, India at least, we have huge numbers of doctors, but in many African countries, primary health care is delivered by nurses. And so it can be done. And even in a country like US, you have this cadre of people called the physician's assistants, who are often the first person you will see. And only if they can't handle the situation, they'll call in a doctor or a specialist. So I think there's a lot of merit in that. It will create job opportunities. It will create a whole cadre of skilled people. And if they are from the community, they would like to live there and work there. And so there have been issues in the sense that there has been opposition to this, unfortunately, from the medical community themselves. So, but I think it's moving ahead in some states, and we need to encourage that to happen. Of course, they are going to need monitoring, and they're going to need constant guidance and upskilling. But now with the programs like the e-Sanjeevani, which is a telehealth program, you can easily support them. So if you have somebody sitting in a clinic and he or she has a doubt, they can very easily connect with a doctor or a specialist in the district hospital or medical college hospital. So I think that is the model, especially if you have to cover large parts of population. In Tamil Nadu, for example, is a different issue. We have enough medical people. You will find doctors in every primary health center, even in sub-centers. Similarly in Kerala and so on. But many states in the north just will not be able to do it in the next 30, 40 years unless there's another cadre that's developed. Yes.
Ma'am, my name is Atul Singh, and it's an honor to have you among us. Ma'am, WHO has been in existence for the last 75 years, and you see we still have a terminology called neglected tropical disease. We have Nipah knocking our doors. Why hasn't WHO been successful in dealing with those tropical diseases?
It's a good question. I'll try to keep it brief. See, WHO cannot solve all the problems of the world. So it's essentially a normative agency, okay? It's the arm of the UN which makes the norms and standards and the data on health for the world. So essentially that's the role of WHO, and also of course to create awareness, to advocacy, etc. for neglected health problems. They're not a funding organization. In fact, WHO itself is extremely underfunded. And there is a lot of movement now to say, okay, if you want a strong WHO, then countries need to, because it's a subscription model, and countries pay a percentage of their GDP as a subscription, plus then WHO raises money through other means. So the annual turnover or the budget for WHO is like $3 billion. So that is less than a budget of a big hospital in the US, for example. And it's supposed to serve the world. So I think expectations have to be moderated of WHO, and their role, as I said, is a normative role. The fact that they frequently call attention to these things, like tuberculosis, they called a global emergency in 1993. Then that kind of gets the world. Similarly, cervical cancer was called for elimination of cervical cancer because we can have a vaccine, and that vaccine should be available to people. Similarly, neglected tropical diseases, periodically they will come up with what is the status of the problem and what are the tools and what are the gaps and what needs to be done. That is the role of WHO. The countries have to actually solve the problem. It's the ministries of health in countries that need to solve the problem. So we cannot expect somebody outside an agency to solve the problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable comments and your thoughts that you put forward to all of us here today. Moving on to the most interesting agenda of the day, a conversation between the authors of the book, Empowering India. I invite Professor T. Pradeep, Institute Professor, IIT Madras, inventor, entrepreneur, social impact technologist, and a poet at heart. He's published over 545 scientific papers, 120 patents, and multiple books, incubated 7 startups, and his technologies have impacted millions of people. He's a recipient of the Padma Shri Award, Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar Prize, Nikkei Asia Prize, Win Future Prize, and many others. Welcome on stage, sir. I also invite Mr. Krishna Narayanan. He's the co-founder and president of Itihasa Research and Digital, studies the evolution of technology domains in India and the world. He co-authored the book Against All Odds, The IT Story of India. Earlier, he was a member of the Infosys Labs Management Council. He was the past president of the IIT Madras Alumni Association and a founding governor member of Aquamap, the water center at IIT Madras. Please take your seats and the stage is all yours. Thank you.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for taking time and spending time with us. Of course, it was delightful to hear the words of Professor Kamakoti and Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. Of course, I was taking some mental notes. Have we made sure we have covered all these things in the book? And I'm happy to say that the scorecard is looking good. Yeah, but really thought-provoking thoughts that you shared. Thank you for that. I think the point about, look, technology, there are tremendous opportunities that are available with these technologies, but you be careful about it. But also how you choose to, what are the impacts that you bring about with it. I think that the point that you brought about, I think is very important. I think we do bring that point out in the book as well. So, okay, so now let's get into the conversation mode. You know, before I begin this, I must say, I had a lot of fun actually doing this book because it gave me a lot of opportunity to interact with Professor. And as you saw in the introduction, of course, he's very accomplished, but I can also say that he comes with tremendous ideas, right? And so I really enjoyed. Thank you, Professor. Now, you know, during all these conversations, you've told me stories about, you know, your love of tinkering machines, you know, some pump that you did in your village and so on. And today you run one of the largest nanotechnology labs in India, perhaps the world. There's a significant shift that has happened. Tell us a little bit, maybe one or two milestones that you have seen along the way, this shift.
Well, I'm from a village. I walked about 4 kilometers one way to my school. And there was no electricity. We got electricity when I was about 21 years of age. So it has been a long story. I came here at IIT Madras 1993, December 1st. There was no sophisticated instrumentation, so to say, to do advanced science. I was coming from Berkeley and Purdue and all that. So it was very hard to do science of that kind. My first grant was 42,000 rupees, and I built a mass spectrometer with components from outside in Velachery. I published my papers, the very first papers with those infrastructure. So looking back today, I would say that there was a time when we were infrastructure limited. I wrote an article called Infrastructure Limited Materials Science. This is what we did at that point in time. And today, we are not limited by infrastructure. Of course, we don't have a synchrotron in our backyard. We don't have things of that kind. But we are not infrastructure limited. That's a very important statement that I would like to make. But then, what is that we are missing? You know, those tinkering, during my PhD, I could build a machine, Indian Institute of Science. Somehow, we have over the years lost this capacity to build. We have not built that into our program. So everyone, maybe in physics department, Professor Bhaskaran, people are still doing. But in other departments, instrumentation is gradually dying. So you asked me my love for tinkering. The tinkering in institutions, it is not very much happening. Of course, because in our innovation center, C5, every kid is tinkering. I think it is tinkering that has got us this building. That capacity to tinker. And that, in certain engineering is happening, but sciences, I wonder whether tinkering is being enhanced, encouraged. I would probably stop here. We can take these, further in the course of, during dinner.
Right. No, and if I were to reflect on my own journey, of course, there was less tinkering. I see some of my friends here, so just because my friends and relatives came to IIT, I landed up here, muddled my way through, did my MBA, sold soaps and Horlicks, etc. for a living. But it was really at Infosys where discovered the power of technology, if you will, and the kind of impact that it had on global customers. Post Infosys, I actually set up a water startup. That's where I got even more sort of closer to the power of technology at sort of ground level impact and so on. But yeah, I mean, in some ways, this book, in some ways kind of helped me bring those thoughts together. Okay, so the next question. Now, as we were analyzing, the book post after we wrote, one of the things we discovered was there were a lot of mention of material science and digital technologies, artificial intelligence throughout the book. Perhaps in a way reflective of our own biases, if you will, but perhaps they were also, the very important foundational technologies for the world. So maybe you can give us some glimpse of, of this material science and what it can do. I know you recently wrote an op-ed on some robotic synthesizer and so on, so maybe you can talk.
Well, so much is happening in materials today. In 2020, there was a paper in Science which talked about a computer reading a paper, and it was about a molecule, and a machine at the back end synthesizes that molecule. Feed in paper, outcome molecules. So this is computer. Imagine what is going to happen to our laboratories. Our laboratories, hundreds and thousands of molecules that we are making or planning, synthesizing, tomorrow they will all be synthesized one at a time. The best synthetic methodologies will be analyzed, and organic chemists, the synthetic organic chemistry as we practice will be done by computers. As this progresses, of course there are many other things in synthetic biology, somebody might tell me, but this offers tremendous possibilities. So while I say this, I must say that it is also possible that these computers can be accessed from the villages. As a result, the ideas that you generate will be synthesized elsewhere, and that has a tremendous potential to the ideas that we talked about earlier, Dr. Swaminathan talked about earlier, that people's medicine, how can innovation of this kind become possible with the collective intelligence of people whom we are not representing today.
Right. And if I can reflect on perhaps the AI part, there are a couple of things that we show in the book. One of which Professor Kamakuri talked about, this 5Gi technology. Right? The whole world was developing something on 5G, but the Indian scientists understood the needs for 5G technology in India and developed a new standard called 5Gi, which today is very helpful for other parts of the world as well. Right? So that was one interesting thing. Another one is, for example, and we have, in fact, IIT Madras and Indian Institute of Science have done a lot of work in terms of brain sciences, computational neuroscience. And we are beginning that research. How you can combine neuroscience with artificial intelligence. There's a moonshot project in Indian Institute of Science called the brain co-processor, right? And so on. So there are some very, very interesting developments happening in the world. Now, Professor, I know you headed the Kerala government's higher education, reforms committee. And in the book too, we talk about the higher education model and so on. So maybe if you can highlight one or two salient points, like what will that reformed model look like?
I feel that, what we are doing at, in these IITs, this book itself, for example, there's a lot that institutions universities, state universities can learn from. IIT Madras Alumni Association, Nishani, has about what, 57,000 alumni you connect? 57,000. Right. 57,000. This is almost all the alumni that we have produced, right? This is what our collective strength is. We are in a position to connect. A typical Kerala university has 58,000 students on rolls. You can imagine how many students they have gone out of these universities. They are typically about 50 years old. We don't even connect to 1% of them. This tremendous alumni network, alumni engagement model that you pioneered practicing in Aquamap and all, there is a whole lot that we can do through our universities. In fact, if we were to do that in Kerala, every home will be connected. And at 55, people retire in Kerala and most of these states. And they live, today is 74 or 75. So it is possible for them to contribute collectively for the growth if the universities can offer as a vehicle to connect to the societies. IIT offers, just as Kamakoti is talking about connecting children, alumni we should connect. And their collective capacity should be used for nation building, the state building, the village building.
Fantastic. Of course, as the past president of IIT Madras Alumni Association, these words are like music to my ears. Thank you. Now, I do want to say, as part of maybe a comment on the writing the book itself. Right now, we started this project. The very first call happened with the book advisory committee happened in January 2020. So it's been a long time in the making. And what we did was, as part of this writing the book, we connected with more than 100 scientists and engineers and industry executives in the country. In fact, we have thanked all of them in the book. We've acknowledged them in the book, and their inputs were very helpful in shaping this book. I must also say that, of course, along the way, we also had a little bit of fun as well in creating this book. I like Professor Pradeep. He challenged us. He said, "See, we must bring some art into the book somehow. Although this is science and technology, now what do we do?" So then I went to my friend, the artificial intelligence, generative engines. So we played around with DALL-E. And actually there are some pictures here, if you, if you can go to the next one. Pictures like this. Many of these pictures in the book, these are all actually generated by the AI engine. We gave text inputs and the AI engine generated the image, right? We said some Bharatanatyam dancer with this, and it'll generate. And then, of course, the human artist took over and made this better, right? So things like this. So each one of these pictures takes a uniquely Indian concept and embeds some science and technology element into it. So we had some fun along the way. So I do encourage you to read the book. So let me. We can go on. Passionate about the book, but I think we should also open up to some questions from the audience now.
Good evening, sir. I'm Gautam, a PhD scholar from Applied Mechanics Department. So my question is, we are talking about self-sufficiency and IP generation, but on the other hand, the spending on research and development in India has been coming down. So this seems contradictory for me from a layman's point of view. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, spending is going down. We certainly need to increase it from much larger. We are just about numbers are there for everyone. Just about 0.65%, or not even 1%. So where are we? We need to put in much more effort. But then there are many good things that are happening. More and more people are coming into science. It is now possible that industry can support research. A large number of companies are coming in. you might be, happy to know that IIT Madras gets nearly, we are just about 600 crores we are getting from various sources for research. Another 600 crores is coming from corporate funding. So this is a big change that has happened. Now, if all other institutions can similarly mobilize resources, state has to fund. Of course it has. There is no other way. At the same time, corporations are coming, alumni are coming. We are our own, we are generating. You just now heard that all these startups put together, we are somewhere valued around 40,000 crores. So this is how to move, but much more to be done.
And if I can add one more, Dr. Soumya mentioned this in her talk, this need for mission mode projects. And I think the more such mission mode projects we bring about in the country, I think we will begin to see more bang for the buck. As in, we'll have better utilization for the money, and you'll have greater impact that comes through such identifying missions.
I think the book was fabulous. I mean, the way it started with like a glass window through which you could see into the future. There were different dimensions of the book that came through. The historical aspects of how we can leverage it. Kamakoti used some really nice words. Traditional knowledge systems, how can we leverage them to actually build this foundational scientific research and energy? I'm just curious, how did you both collaborate in such varied dimensions of the book and, get such a lovely book together? Which aspects and how did you, any aspects of the collaboration while writing this book that you want to share with us?
I would probably start. One thing that I am passionate about is that science and technology, humanities, that's a continuum. I am as much a poet as a scientist. So I see greater inclusion when we start talking about education in totality. Water was the subject through which we were connected, and water is highly inclusive. Everything actually merges, becomes water. Whether it is mechanical engineering or civil engineering or chemistry or artificial intelligence or new sensors, robotics, whatever, water connects. Through that connection, I saw that he has great passion for one thing that I just mentioned, this alumni connect, engagement, million minds, all that. He has this scale, and I am a molecular person. I look at things in detail. Smaller molecular thing. So this was the connect, and can you please build on this?
Sure. So I thought Professor was just science awards he won. He was like getting many science awards. But then I was fascinated when I discovered that he is also Sahitya Akademi Award winner from Kerala, right? For his work. So then I asked him, please tell me some interesting poems, and we have actually quoted one. And I want to read that, of course, the English meaning, which I think is very apt. This is by this poet Mahakavi Edeseri Govindan Nair. In his poem To School Again, he's actually talking to his child who is going to school. And he says, the small birds perching on twigs, waiting as usual for you to come. Most beloved they are. Say goodbye to them. You both understand each other's natter. By the time you come back after studies, you must have forgotten each other. As we gobble up some grammar and return in a daze, alas, by then, the language that regaled all beings would have left us for sure. And in some ways, this point came out that perhaps we come to engineering colleges and we forget the language of humanity, of life itself. And that was the point which this poet brought out. And I thought that was a very telling poem to tell the world that we need a different sort of education. So those were points that we connected.
Just wanted to tell you that this very same poet, 1956, he wrote a poem called, it's about a bridge that once you construct that bridge, we celebrate that construction of the bridge, but then after that bridge is constructed, you have also created a division. Division which will make one portion of that river, one side of the river, to be filled with filth, the other side, so-called development. And this is 1956, and we celebrate environmentalism with Silent Spring, 1962. So this actually was very much here, and it was one of the reasons why that poem came in.
I saw the nice pictures generated by AI. So the question is, was any of the text...
Close, yeah.
Was any of the text generated by AI? And if not, why not?
Oh, in the book you mean? No, actually the text was not generated by AI.
But why not?
Why not? Yeah, I mean, I must say this. For my next book, I will be using AI for sure. No, but in a way, I do use generative AI tools today, but they are very powerful tools. If you know how to have a dialogue with them, right? I mean, you just can't say, now write the book, Empowering India. It's not going to write the book. But I think you can have meaningful conversations. The prompt engineering, the kind of questions that you pose to it, I think it's a very powerful tool. And I hope many of the students in IIT are using it.
Now that you've written a book, Pradeep and you, AI can grasp this to help you write the next one. But otherwise, they didn't know you too, right?
Yeah, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have one more agenda. I know that we started late and everyone's probably hungry, but this is very important and exciting for IIT Madras Alumni Association. Today, right here, we have a special outreach initiative, and I would like to call on stage for that Shamla, CEO of Unimity Solutions and alumnus from the batch of 1995, currently president of IIT Madras Alumni Association. I would also like to call Mrs. Tricha Anjali, has been an associate professor with Illinois Tech, associate professor with IIT Mandi, head of data science at Active AI, and currently founder and CEO of Numbers AI. Tricha is also an alumnus of IIT Bombay, batch of 98. Tricha, can we have you here, please? Thank you. Also would like to invite Mr. Raghu Venkat, IIT Madras, batch of 96. MS from IIT Chicago, 20 years in real-time computing, including CBOE and CBOT. Welcome, Raghu, on stage, please. Over to you, Shamla.
Oh, it's a great pride for the Alumni Association to be hosting this really powerful book launch. And I must say that thank you, Dr. Soumya, for bringing your years of experience and having worked with WHO and the foundation. And I think definitely empowering children is foundational in really improving the science and research in our nation. I want to get started with what Professor Kamakoti said, that we must be owners of our ideas and innovation. And the book, Empowering India, is written to capture ideas on how to make India's dream to become a high-income country by 2047 possible. The book, what really makes this book really special is that it is not just gyan and ideas. We all know what gyan means. It's not just gyan and ideas, it goes beyond that and puts forward actually actionable initiatives in well-defined fields that will take us to this next level. So I think it is a big round of applause to Krishnan and Pradeep for getting this out to us. The uniqueness of the book is also that it is a collaborative work of 40 plus brightest minds of India from the IIT Madras across the globe. The alumni came together for many reasons. Alumni come together for many reasons. We are part of an alumni association we do networking, we come together to maybe build some professional contacts. Maybe we come together to give back to the instis sometimes, but then I think this is the most powerful way to come together is to give back to society. And Alumni Association is extremely grateful to Krishnan and Pradeep for leading this along with the thought leadership group to get this wonderful book out for us. And what is fascinating is that the alumni contributions did not stop with that. We now have the alumni contributions from Raghu Venkat and Trisha, who have generously contributed to take these books to the schools and colleges in the second and third tier. And we're very grateful to both of you for this. I would now like to invite you both to come and say a few words.
Sorry, Raghu and I are classmates, 96 batch. Now, when we, around Teachers' Day, suddenly Professor Pradeep got this idea. He said, what can we do, to take this to tier 2, tier 3 colleges? Can we do something? So then I reached out to Raghu and we bounced off some ideas and we said, why don't we, so he sponsored, Trisha and they have sponsored this. And our idea is to now take these books to tier 2, tier 3 colleges. In fact, he reached out to another, Professor Gonzalez, Professor Tag. He's working with a set of colleges here. So we are going to give the books to those colleges. Similarly, at IIT Ma, we have, there's an organization called PALS. They work with 30, 40 colleges in tier 2, tier 3. So we're going to reach out through them to these colleges. Similarly, Professor Pradeep reached out to 2 universities in Kerala. So the Calicut University and Kannur University, vice chancellors. And so through them, we are reaching out to about 100 colleges in Kerala where this book will reach out to. So all of that is getting enabled thanks to the generosity of Raghu and Trisha. So once again, let's put our hands together for them.
I just want to add that, and Krishnan and Pradeep have just not stopped with this. Some of their ideas, or one of their ideas is very close to getting, being utilized in sustainability. The power of this book is that any researcher across the country wants to pick up a topic. He just needs to take this book and he'll get his idea. And so our wish is that more alumni join hands with us. IIT Ma is going to continue to work with Krishnan and Pradeep, maybe to make it, multilingual, take it in different channels, take it to podcasts, YouTubes. How can we spread these ideas? How can we really make sure that these 150 ideas and initiatives that are put forward in this book is actually getting into action and driving us to the 2045 dream to empower India. So thank you one and all for joining us today. I'll now just hand it over to Nishani for the vote of thanks.
Thank you. I just want to let you all know that all proceeds from the sales of the book goes towards the cause of science. This book, apart from the wonders it contains, also makes the perfect gift for a friend, colleague, or your parents, or a teacher. A booth is set up right in the beginning where the book is available for sale. I take this opportunity to thank the wonderful audience and all our dignitaries today. Hearing each one of you made everyone's day unforgettable. We have so many take-backs, and I'm going back as a more intellectual person today. On behalf of the Chennai International Center, I thank all the members who have attended this book launch here today. Thank you, Sabri, for working along with us to making this event a success. Thank you to my team, Vinod, Ram, Papya, and Rakesh, and also Sendil from the Alumni Club, who helped in planning and executing this event. Thank you, one and all. Thank you so much.